I saw this and I said, my goodness, the mom revolution, which swept Glenn Youngkin into office in Virginia, the outraged parents are grabbing pitchforks all over the country. And this was staggering if you did not see it. Buck, do you remember all the discussion in the middle of COVID about the crazy people on the San Francisco Board of Education who were renaming schools that had been named after George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and even Dianne Feinstein? They were trying to rename every school basically in San Francisco. They were simultaneously attempting, and this is a big story that I think is only going to grow, to limit the number of Asian students who were allowed into their high-performing high schools. They were simultaneously also diluting the merit there, and all of these things, also not allowing them to go to school for so long. So parents got fed up, and they decided to recall many of these San Francisco school board members. And Buck, the results are mind-blowing. Over 70% of all San Francisco voters voted to recall the super left-wing, wildly out-of-touch progressive members of the city school board. And it wasn't even close. Allison Collins, recall, 78% in favor of it. These are San Francisco voters. Gabriela Lopez, 74% in favor of it. Faga Malaiga, and I may be mispronouncing his name, 71% in favor of it. We've talked about Northern Virginia. We've talked about the school board meetings that I went to myself here in the Nashville area. But, Buck, when I saw these election results come in last night, I said, my goodness, not only are we headed for a potential disaster in red and purple areas, right? Red states and purple states, like I would still say Virginia might be classified. When San Francisco voters, the most liberal in the entire country, are saying we are sick of left-wing woke politics in our schools, that is a monumental statement that is being made. The Biden administration should be running scared. AOC should be curled up in the fetal position. This ain't good for the Bernie crew.
The Democrats have failed children all across America. That's obvious. That much is just apparent to everybody. Whether this will translate into, and by the way, they're still calling for masking of children in schools. The official, I watched some of, and we'll talk about it later, Clay, because I know we've got our Ukraine on the ground from our friend Nolan Peterson Ukraine update coming in a few moments. But I watched the COVID task force this morning, and they still have the top doctors saying, masking, good, mask up kids in schools. But one of these things that there are only a few areas, it feels like, where people really understand, where they're interacting with the state, with the government in a way that affects them. It used to be about the DMV. I got to be honest with you. You don't do the DMV that much.
DMV's pretty good now.
DMV's actually gotten pretty decent. People trash the DMV.
Doubt.
I'm like, I got in and out in 5 minutes last time I was there. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But the public school system, that matters. That matters to your kids. It matters to the adults who not only want the best for their children, but also rely on that for their schedule so they can do their job during the day. And the entirely Democrat-dominated sector of public education in America in blue states, and even in purple states, was an abject failure for children and adults all across the country during the pandemic. And they have not even been willing to see accountability. They haven't even willing to say, we were wrong, we're sorry. They're still doing this stuff. They're still pushing this stuff. And when you listen to some of the COVID commissars out there, Clay, they're talking about how to get ready in schools for the next time. They're already thinking about, the next COVID season, so they haven't repudiated this. They haven't said, we're sorry. And when you think about it in a place like San Francisco, they finally, now, does this mean people are going to vote Republican? I think the answer is no. And this is what's so frustrating. Look what happened with Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom's poll numbers still stink because Gavin Newsom sucks at his job. He is bad at this, right? But they wouldn't vote for a Republican. So there's this disconnect. It's like Democrats go, okay, that's too crazy, but I can't vote for the insurrectionist white nationalist Republicans. San Francisco is not going to change its politics, but to your initial point, the mobilization of parents and the extreme wokeness that's even too much for the left are hopefully a potent cocktail for the upcoming midterm elections that will deliver, where it can be delivered, stinging rebukes to these lunatics for what we've been up against. A real slapdown, because by the way, we started saying it here on the show that masking up children was child abuse.
Yes.
Now I see it all over conservative media. Everyone says masking up children is child abuse. I had never heard it anywhere before we said it. I'm just going to point, which is, by the way, good. I want people to listen to what we're saying. I hear the word apparatus now more than ever before in the conservative media. Yes, it is a good word. Use it, take it, run with it. We have to keep this going, Clay, because I think we can all see what the Democrat plan is. What do you mean? We got through it. It was great. There were no mandates. It's cool. It's fine. We did a great job. The gaslighting will be thermonuclear.
When I went to that school board meeting in August, I called you right after, and I said, this is going to be massive. And it has spread so quickly. And to your point, yes, I think you are right about the way that people might feel nervous to even consider voting for a Republican in San Francisco because so much of their identity is wrapped up in the idea of, I'm a liberal, I'm a progressive. But what they're recognizing in San Francisco is they don't actually like the liberal and progressive governing, right? It's very great when you're on social media and you're like, let's throw up the power fist. Let's talk about how much BLM matters. Let's talk about how we are so, overwhelmed with white guilt. But where that leads you is to a noxious place. And what is fascinating to me, Buck, is I think there is a massive number of people out there, white, black, Asian, Hispanic. Every parent has a great deal in common because your number one goal when you become a parent is what? For your kids to be highly educated as well as they can and hopefully be more successful in life than you were, or at least happy, right? And productive. And what's happening right now is our schools aren't allowing that to occur.